Welcome to Shadow Warefare. This channel exists because there is a war most people never see, but they feel it every single day. A war that doesn't use guns or knives, but alters hours, words, and access. A war where families suffer without knowing why, where prayers feel blocked, where sleep is restless, where progress keeps collapsing right at the edge of breakthrough. On this channel, we don't play religion. We expose darkness, we confront witchcraft, and we teach spiritual warfare from a place of experience, not theory. Today's message is not motivational. It is not comfortable. It is not something you will hear in most churches. This is a revelation, which reveals the 3 hidden prayer hours that destroy every witchcraft altar in your home. If you are watching this, it is not an accident. Some of you clicked because the title disturbed you. Some of you felt a pull you couldn't explain. Some of you are tired of praying and seeing nothing change. And some of you already know something is wrong in your house, but you don't know how to name it. Let me say this slowly so it sinks in. Witchcraft does not attack randomly. Witchcraft is scheduled. Witchcraft is timed. Witchcraft operates by hours. And that is why most believers lose battles without ever understanding why. Before I came out, before I broke free, before I renounced the covenants I was part of, I learned something that shocked me even after leaving that world. Witches do not fear loud prayers. They do not fear long prayers. They do not fear emotional prayers. What they fear is prayers prayed at the wrong time for them and the right time for you. Because time is a gate. In the dark world, every altar has hours of strength and hours of weakness. Every altar breathes, feeds, and communicates at specific moments. And when you unknowingly pray outside of those moments, your prayer may be sincere, but it is resisted, delayed, redirected, sometimes even monitored. That's why some of you feel heavy during prayer. That's why you fall asleep the moment you try to pray. That's why distractions multiply. That's why your mind suddenly becomes noisy. That's why you pray and then feel drained instead of empowered. It's not because you are weak. It's because you are praying without understanding time. I need you to hear this clearly. There are prayer hours that bypass resistance. There are prayer hours that confuse monitoring spirits. There are prayer hours that collapse witchcraft altars without confrontation, and these hours are hidden in plain sight. Most witches know them. Most believers ignore them. Let me pull you deeper into this truth. Altars are not physical objects alone. An altar is a legal meeting point between the physical and the spiritual. An altar can exist in a forest, yes. It can exist under a tree, yes. It can exist in a shrine, yes. But an altar can also exist over a home, over a bloodline, over a marriage, over a child, over a name. Some of you didn't build the altar attacking you. You inherited it. Some of you married into it. Some of you activated it unknowingly through words, agreements, or repeated sin. And some of you are targeted simply because of what you carry. Here is what witches know that many Christians don't. Altars respond more to timing than to volume. In the covens I was exposed to, we were taught to observe prayer patterns of believers. Yes, you heard that right. Certain spirits are assigned to monitor prayer habits. When you pray, how long you pray, when you stop, when you sleep, when your guard is down. That is why routine prayer without revelation becomes predictable, and predictable prayer is easy to resist. Now listen carefully, because this part matters. There are 3 prayer hours that are extremely dangerous to witchcraft altars. Not because of the words spoken, but because of what happens in the spirit realm during those windows. These are hours when spiritual authority shifts, when gates change guard, when certain spirits withdraw and others have not yet fully taken position. In witchcraft we called these a thin hours. Believers rarely talk about them. Witches plan around them, and many of you are asleep during them. I am not going to rush this. I need you to understand the foundation before I expose the hours themselves. Spiritual power does not float randomly. It flows through structure. God himself works by times and seasons. Darkness copies this, but with limits. That is why certain attacks happen at night. That is why certain dreams repeat at specific hours. That is why some of you wake up suddenly at the same time every night without an alarm. That is not insomnia. That is a signal. Some of you wake up between certain hours with fear. Some of you wake up with pressure on your chest. Some of you wake up from sexual dreams. Some of you wake up suddenly angry or anxious. Some of you wake up thirsty. Some of you wake up and can't fall back asleep. And you thought it was random. It is not. Those moments are not attacks only. Sometimes they are invitations. Witchcraft thrives when believers sleep through their authority. Let me say something that may offend religious ears. Not all prayer is equal. The same prayer prayed at different hours produces different results. That is why he withdrew while others slept. That is why he rose a great while before day. That is why he prayed through watches of the night. He understood something most people skim over. Darkness has shifts, and if you pray during a shift change, you disrupt operations. In the dark world, we were warned about believers who pray at certain hours, not because they shout, not because they fast endlessly, but because their prayers arrive when altars are exposed. Those believers cause problems. Now here is the uncomfortable truth. Many witchcraft altars in homes are not maintained daily. They are reinforced at specific times, which means outside of those times they are weaker than you think. But if you only pray when it's convenient, if you only pray when it feels good, if you only pray when everyone else is awake, you are often praying when the altar is already reinforced. That's why your prayer feels like it hits a wall. This message is not about fear. It is about precision. In part 1, I am not yet revealing the hours. I am preparing your understanding so when I do, you don't misuse them. Because these hours are not for casual prayer. They are not for scrolling your phone. They are not for half-sleep words. They are for intentional warfare. Some of you are saying, but I pray all the time. And I believe you. But frequency without timing is effort without strategy. Let me expose another layer. Witchcraft altars gain power when households are spiritually noisy but spiritually blind. Arguing, complaining, watching everything. Speaking death casually, praying randomly, sleeping deeply during critical hours. That combination creates access, and access is all darkness needs. There are homes where witches cannot enter. There are homes where witches cannot monitor. There are homes where spells return to sender without prayer meetings or announcements. Those homes are aligned with divine timing. You don't need to know every demon's name. You don't need to confront witches directly. You don't need to obsess over attacks. You need to learn when to stand. In the next part, I will begin revealing the first of the 3 hidden prayer hours. When I do, some of you will suddenly realize why your life felt stuck, why your dreams intensified, why resistance increased whenever you tried to change. And some of you will realize you have been waking up at that hour for years and ignoring it. Before we go there, let me warn you. Once you start praying during these hours, things will shift. Not always gently, exposure happens, resistance reacts. Darkness does not like losing ground quietly, but peace follows authority. If you're still watching, it means something in you is hungry for truth, not comfort. Stay with me. Now let me take you inside what I was taught, to what I later understood from the opposite side. The first hidden prayer hour that destroys witchcraft altars is not famous, it is not shouted about, it is not trendy, and that is exactly why it works. This hour exists at a moment when most of the world is asleep, when religious activity is quiet, when spiritual traffic is low, but authority is high. This is the hour just before dawn breaks, not sunrise. Before it, that thin space where night has lost strength but day has not yet fully arrived. In the dark world, this window is dangerous. Let me explain why. Witchcraft altars draw power from darkness, secrecy, and continuity. Night provides cover, but as morning approaches, something shifts. Certain spirits withdraw because their jurisdiction weakens. Others are not yet active. That creates a gap. That gap is what destroys altars. In witchcraft, we avoided operations during that window unless absolutely necessary, because attacks launched then were unstable. Backfires increased. Monitoring spirits lost clarity. Messages from altars became distorted. And when believers prayed during that time, especially unknowingly, it caused disruption. This hour exposes what was hidden all night. That is why the enemy fights your sleep hardest toward morning. That is why alarms suddenly fail. That is why dreams intensify right before waking. That is why fatigue feels heavier just before dawn. It is not because you are tired. It is because something does not want you alert. Many of you wake up during this hour and roll over. Many of you silence the nudge. Many of you say, "I'll pray later," and darkness breathes again. Let me say something clearly. This is not about length of prayer. This is about presence. Even 10 minutes of focused authority during this hour does more damage than hours of scattered prayer later in the day. Why? Because altars are exposed. During this hour, witchcraft altars are not feeding. They are not reinforced. They are vulnerable. They are adjusting. And when prayer enters during adjustment, structure collapses. In the covens, we call this altar confusion. An altar confused begins to malfunction. An altar confused sends wrong instruction. An altar confused attacks its own source. That is how witchcraft destroys itself. Now listen carefully, because this is important. You do not need to shout during this hour. You do not need to pace. You do not need to beg. This hour responds to alignment, not noise. When a believer rises and acknowledges God's authority during this window, it signals something in the spirit realm. This house is awake, and an awake house is dangerous to witchcraft. Some of you are thinking, but I wake up at that time exhausted. Exact. Fatigue is often the last line of defense. Witchcraft prefers you tired rather than sinful, distracted rather than rebellious, asleep rather than aware, because awareness removes access. Now let me explain how altars in homes operate, because this will unlock understanding. Household altars are often fed indirectly, through sleep, through dreams, through emotions, through arguments, through fear, through unresolved trauma, through repeated cycles. Nighttime is prime feeding time. But when you interrupt that cycle at the edge of morning, you cut the supply. This is why some people feel lighter when they pray early in the morning without knowing why. This is why some people experience sudden clarity. This is why anxiety lifts. This is why dreams change. You are interrupting the altar's rhythm. Witchcraft relies on rhythm. Break the rhythm, weaken the altar. Now here is where many believers miss it. They wake up during this hour and immediately grab their phone, they check messages, they scroll. They consume noise, and the window closes, not because God left, but because attention shifted. Authority follows focus. Even sitting up in bed and acknowledging God's presence during this hour changes spiritual atmosphere. Even whispering His name, even thanking Him, even declaring peace over your home. You are not trying to fight demons. You are asserting jurisdiction. There is a difference. In witchcraft, we were taught that certain homes were sealed by timing. We avoided them, not because the people were perfect, but because the house was spiritually alert at vulnerable hours. Those houses rejected infiltration. Now hear this part carefully. If witchcraft has been operating in your home, this hour may initially feel uncomfortable. Resistance may increase. You may feel pressure. You may feel the urge to stop. You may feel emotional heaviness. That does not mean it's not working. It means something is losing grip. Darkness resists exposure, but persistence during this hour rewrites spiritual patterns. Some of you will notice after a few days, dreams change, sleep improves, arguments reduce, fear decreases, clarity increases, not because you fought harder, because you showed up at the right time. Now I need to address something sensitive. This hour is not magic. It is not a ritual. It is not a formula. It works because God designed time with purpose, and darkness is subject to that design. Do not turn this into superstition. Do not turn this into fear-driven routine. This hour works best when approached with peace, not panic. You are not chasing witches. You are reclaiming space. Some of you will ask, what if I can't wake up? Start small. Even once or twice a week begins to disrupt patterns. Even awareness begins to weaken altars. Remember, darkness needs consistency. Light only needs access. Before we move to the second hidden prayer hour, I want you to reflect on something. How many times have you woken up near morning for no clear reason? How many times have you dismissed it? How many times have you felt something was off but couldn't explain it? That wasn't random. That was a door. This hour sits in the deep middle of the night, when silence is heavy, when the mind is unguarded, when emotions surface without filters. It is the hour when many people are asleep physically, but wide open emotionally in the spirit. In the dark world, this hour is prime time. Why? Because emotions are easiest to access when logic sleeps. This is when covens release confusion. This is when relational tension is planted. This is when lust is stirred. This is when fear is seeded. This is when discouragement is whispered. This is when people wake up feeling sad for no reason. This is when memories resurface. This is when people dream of past lovers, old wounds, old mistakes. This is when people wake up anxious, heavy, or emotionally drained. And most people assume it's psychological. It's not always. This hour is used to edit emotions. Witchcraft understands something many underestimate. If you can't control a person's actions, control their emotions, and their actions will follow. That is why so many marital arguments start in the morning over nothing. That is why irritation appears suddenly. That is why affection feels blocked. That is why misunderstanding multiplies. Seeds planted at night bloom during the day. Now listen carefully. This hour is dangerous for witchcraft when believers interrupt it with conscious prayer, even briefly. Why? Because this is the hour when emotional manipulation is actively being written. Interrupt the writing, distort the script. In the dark world, we avoided believers who were spiritually alert during this hour. They were unpredictable. Emotional attacks didn't stick. Dreams failed to implant. Confusion dissolved too quickly. Those people were emotionally sealed. Now I need to clarify something. You don't need to stay awake all night. Some of you are thinking, I feel calmer. That's authority settling in. Some of you are thinking, this explains a lot. That's wisdom connecting dots. Now let me speak directly to a specific group of people. Those of you who feel like something has been following your life. Those of you who feel like progress keeps resetting. Those of you who feel spiritually tired without reason. Those of you who feel watched, blocked, or delayed. You are not imagining it. But you are also not powerless. Darkness exaggerates its presence when it senses awareness rising. That doesn't mean it's winning. It means it's being noticed. And once noticed, its time is limited. Let me tell you something, many won't. Most witchcraft collapses not with confrontation, but with neglect. When access is removed, it starves. These prayer hours remove access, not through fear, through order. You don't need to announce what you're doing. You don't need to explain it to people. You don't need to argue with anyone spiritually or physically. Quiet authority is the most dangerous kind. The moment you stop reacting emotionally, darkness loses hooks. The moment you stop being predictable, monitoring weakens. The moment your home develops rhythm with intention, altars destabilize. Now hear this clearly so you don't misunderstand. If you miss a day, nothing bad happens. If you oversleep, nothing attacks you. If you forget, you're not punished. This is not witchcraft disguised as prayer. This is not ritual. This is alignment. God is not counting hours. Darkness is counting access. Remove access. And peace follows. Some of you will notice changes subtly. Some of you will notice them suddenly. Some of you will only notice them when old cycles no longer return. That's how real freedom works. Quiet, undramatic, permanent. Now I want to say something important before we end. Do not go looking for witches. Do not accuse family members. Do not overanalyze dreams. Do not read into everything. That creates unnecessary fear, and fear opens doors. Confidence closes them. Live your life. Enjoy your peace. Protect your space. Stay grounded. Light does not panic. Light occupies. If this message resonated with you, it's because it was meant to clarify, not scare you. And if you feel relief rather than fear, that's how you know it came from truth. Shadow Warefare exists to expose what thrives in silence and empower people to walk without paranoia. If you're still here, you're not weak, you're becoming aware. And awareness changes everything. Stay steady. Stay calm. Stay intentional. The war does not need your anxiety. It ends with your authority. Shadow Warefare.